Is the FCC chairman Ajit Pai corrupt? I think we need to take a look at that today on ZachD TV. I am Zach, and usually I like to stay on top of tech news. I try to stay away from too much net neutrality, but now we have to talk about it. Now, by this point, I'm going to assume you know what net neutrality is. And if you don't, it's basically rulings here in the United States that requires our internet service provider to give every website equal access to the internet. And by equal access, I mean not throttling websites because they don't pay you more to allow their website to be fast. Or create tiered programs where if you want to access Facebook, you have to pay them an additional fee. Or if you want Netflix to run, you have to pay them an additional fee. Picture sort of how your cable bill is right now. Do you really want the cable companies to be able to price internet that way? I know I don't. Well, coming up next week, the FCC is going to vote to repeal net neutrality and put the internet back to the way it was in 2015, which is something Ajit likes to say wasn't broken. It was working perfectly for so long, and there was no problem with it. Unfortunately, when you look at the facts, that's not true. In fact, net neutrality came about because of the actions of our internet service providers. Things like in 2005, when Madison River Communications blocked VoIP service, and the FCC had to step in to tell them, no, you can't do that. Or when AT&T blocked Skype because they felt it was competing with their telephone service. You guys might remember in 2011 when you couldn't access Google Wallet on AT&T, Sprint, or Verizon phones because it was competing against their own wallet program. Do you remember in 2012 when AT&T blocked FaceTime unless you paid them a premium? I don't know if you use Metro PCS, but there was even a point where they tried to block every streaming service except YouTube from accessing their internet. They went so far as to sue the FCC for the right to do this. And of course, there's a big Comcast one, when they throttled Netflix, made it a nearly unusable platform because it was always buffering, because Netflix refused to pay them extra money to give them appropriate internet speeds. I mean, heck, Time Warner this year is refusing to upgrade their line because they can't get more money out of Netflix and Riot Games. Now, of course, these companies are currently promising they would never do something like this, but their past performance proves this is exactly their business model. Believe me, I am all about unregulated business, and that is great when you have the ability to choose different providers. Here in the United States, I know personally myself, I have one service provider. The two large cities I live near, Scranton, PA being one of them, only have one internet service provider. There will be no competition. This will allow the ISPs to do what they want to do. Now, of course, Ajit says that, well, it'll go to the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, and they will regulate and they will watch out for us. And heck, on the subject of the FTC, they are currently in court with AT&T over their practice of throttling unlimited internet subscribers in order to force them to buy a more expensive plan. This is happening today. And believe me, there's plenty of people coming out against this. Heck, the FTC wants the FCC to hold off on this vote next week until they have time to prosecute this case. Because if this vote goes through, it kills the Federal Trade Commission's case. And it says that it's okay to throttle people that are using too much internet. Now, to get back to my question of, is Ajit Pai corrupt? First, we have to look at who he is. Everybody's big talk about him is that he worked for Verizon for 2 years. And he did. He was their Associate General Counsel before he went into government. He left Verizon in 2003 and started working his way up through the ranks in the FCC. And in 2011, Pai was nominated for a Republican Party position with the FCC under President Obama. And in January of this year, he was given the title of FCC Chair. So let's take a quick look then at what he's done since he spent so many years with the FCC. In 2014, he went against a plan that would reform the inmate calling system. This is a system that prisoners have to use in order to call home, talk to their loved ones, and whoever else they need to speak. The FCC wanted to cap the amount per minute that these companies are allowed to charge the inmate. And of course, Pai fought against it. Because of course, if it was no good, there'd be competition. Except that prisons contract with one carrier, and it's not like the prisoners can just pick their own plan provider, you know. In 2016, when working with the Lifeline program, which is a program that allows for reduced rate and free internet connections for low-income participants, he rescinded permissions for 9 new broadband carriers, basically shut down 9 new carriers that were started because of this Lifeline program, and denied the application of 900 others. To me, that sounds like he was protecting the existing companies that were already there and killing their competition through legislation. Just last month, in November 2017, some members of the House of Representatives asked the Inspector General of the FCC to investigate Pai and his connection to Sinclair Broadcast Company. Because the FCC, under Pai, has taken numerous actions that directly benefited that company. Things like not allowing large broadcasters to buy up all the news networks in a single area to get rid of dissenting points of view. I mean, these rules keep one company from owning all the news that we receive. Ajit got rid of him, and now they are investigating him. This is starting to sound pretty corrupt to me. Now let's come up to his current action. Recently, the New York Attorney General came out against the FCC because they were unwilling to help with his investigation into the fraud where the net neutrality comment system was being fed comments using real people's names who never made the comment. I mean, there alone, it was tens of thousands of New York residents had their identities stolen to make comments that were pro-repealing net neutrality. Of course, after the Attorney General came out and told them, hey, made a big stink about it, then they decided to do something. And in fact, just this Monday, the FCC Commissioner, New York's Attorney General, and 28 senators came out to ask the FCC not to proceed with this vote until they have a chance to look into the fraud that was perpetrated in these comments. And that statement by the Attorney General, Eric Schneiderman, he believes that over 1 million Americans had their identities stolen to make these fake comments. FCC Commissioner Jessica Rosenworcel stood right next to him when he said this and agreed. But yet Ajit does not want to slow this down. He is planning on dismantling it. And according to Jessica, when you add up the identity theft, the 50,000 comments that were just missing, the alleged DDoS attack that happened against the site, and the other concerns she has, she stated that when you add all that up, what you have is a record that's hard to trust. It is incumbent on the FCC and all my colleagues to stand back, figure out what's happening with this record before us, and get to the bottom of these stolen identities. The crazier part of this, though, is who cares about all that? 23 million people responded to this, and most of them wanted to keep net neutrality. 750,000 people called Congress through the website Battle for the Internet to say they wanted net neutrality. And just yesterday, 700 Verizon stores had protests out front of them of people who want to keep net neutrality. But again, Ajit won't listen. In fact, on Tuesday, after his fellow FCC chairman made her statements, he gave a speech for the International Institute of Communications. The speech was held in Washington, D.C. at the Verizon headquarters. And in this speech, he made a statement that once the plan to restore internet freedom is adopted on December 14th, we will move from heavy-handed regulation to light touch regulation. We had a free and open internet for 2 decades before 2015 with the FTC on the beat, and we will have a free and open internet going forward. To him, it's a foregone conclusion as he stands there and speaks to the people who make the regulations and run our internet service companies. Basically, this week he promised them this is going through. Now, I can't find the money. What is corrupting this guy? I don't know. But you can't tell me someone making these actions has the public interest at heart. Someone who is protecting what is probably internet service providers who stole identities to make comments. By refusing to work with the people investigating those stolen identities, he does not have the public interest at heart. Someone who will give a speech in front of the very people that will benefit before the vote and promise them that we'll be going back to these other regulations doesn't have our best interest at heart. And another thing with this speech, keynote speakers aren't cheap. We all know this. What did they pay to get him there? I mean, a cheap one can be $5 grand, $1,500 for a real cheap. For an unknown, $1,500. Someone like Bill Clinton, reported by Politico, was able to make nearly $3 million in the year after his wife announced her run for presidency, giving speeches. Ajit, what'd they pay you for your speech? The worst part about this is they are probably going to gut net neutrality on the 14th. And I don't think there's a lot that we can do about it. Call your congressman, call your representatives, call your lawmaker. They can stop this by passing a law. Tell them that we the people do not want this. Because who knows, you might start the next year having to pay extra if you want to watch YouTube. With that, I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks for sticking around to watch this. If you like what I do here, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. It will really help my channel out. I am doing videos now Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so I'll see you again next week. And until next time, have fun and be safe.